Hello, this is John Dominic O'Connor, and I am going to do a video of my Now That's What I Call Music collection. And the way I get the Now CDs is that I usually get them through iTunes and burn a CD of them, so sometimes I'll have to burn two discs. So here they are. Now let's see. I got 68 now. That's what I call music albums. A 69th album, now Christmas 1, is for my parents. That's who it belongs to. Alright, let's start with the numbered series. We'll go through the number series in order of release, while the special edition ones we'll do in shuffle. Okay, so I'll move the slide a little closer. Alright, let's start with Now That's What I Call Music 1, the first Now CD ever released. It features 17 songs. No other Now That's What I Call Music albums in the numbered series feature 17 songs. This is the American Now series. And it features 3 songs that reached the Billboard Hot 100 #1 position. Together Again by Janet Jackson, All My Life by Casey and JoJo, and Mba by Hanson. This was released on October 27th, 1998, and was the first Now in the United States ever released. And the CD is 17 years old today. Now we move on to Now 2. So, this Now That's What I Call Music 2 CD, is the first out of 3 Now CDs to feature 18 songs, featuring 1 song that reached the top of the Billboard Hot 100, Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. Now we move on to Now That's What I Call Music 3. So, just like Now 2, this album has 18 songs and includes the Billboard Hot 100 #1 hit, Balamos by Enrique Iglesias. Although Now 2 was released on July 27th, 1999, this Now, forgot to say that when I was looking at the Now 2, this Now 3 was released on December 7th, 1999. Now we go to Now 4. This is the last Now to feature 18 songs. So, this Now album was released on July 18th, 2000. July 18th, 2000. This is the first Now That's What I Call Music album to be released in the 2000s. Last 90s Now was Now 3. And this album features 2 songs that top the Billboard Hot 100, which are I Knew I Loved You by Savage Garden and Try Again by Alea. We got more albums to see. This is Now That's What I Call Music 5. This is the first out of 3 Nows to feature 19 songs. And it features 3 #1 hits, which are It's Gonna Be Me by NSYNC and what's, oh yeah, Incomplete by Cisco, and Doesn't Really Matter by who? Janet Jackson. This was released on November 14th, 2000, and it's the best-selling album of the Now series in the United States, the numbered series. This right here is Now That's What I Call Music 6. And like Now 5, this album features 19 songs, including the number one's Independent Woman, Part 1 by Destiny's Child, It Wasn't Me by Shaggy, and With Arms Wide Open by Creed, although it's a strings mix or radio version featured on this album. Next one is Now That's What I Call Music 7. This album was released on Now 6 is from April 3rd, 2001. This album, Now 7, was released on July 31st, 2001, and is the last Now to feature 19 songs. And it has one song that reached the Billboard 200, which would be Janet Jackson's All For You. Now, from this one all the way until Now 48, except for 32 and 33, each Now That's What I Call Music album would contain 20 songs. So this Now That's What I Call Music 8 has 3 Billboard, was released on November 20th, 2001, and has 3 Billboard Hot 100 number 1 hits. Would be Bootylicious by Destiny's Child, Stutter by Matiscal, and I think it's Matiscal, I don't know what the lead artist is, and You Got It Bad by Usher. And look at that. The first Now album with dedication. It's dedicated to Aaliyah. I meant to say Aaliyah first, not Aaliyah, sorry. She was born on January 16th, 1979, and at the age of 22 on August 25th, 2001, she died in a plane crash. So everyone honor Aaliyah for the sad news. And here's a second disc, because it's a fake version. This is Now That's What I Call Music 9, and this album was released on this album was released on March 19th, 2002, and features the Billboard Hot 100 number 1 hit Family Affair by Mary J. Blige. And this is Now That's What I Call Music 10. This album was released on July 23rd, 2002, and features the number 1 hits Always on Time by Ja Rule and How You Remind Me by Nickelback. This is actually the first Now to not feature Backstreet Boys. And this album is the only album that has a number 1 hit song at the end. Most have them at the start. I really wish the light was working so I can get a better view of this. Here's Now That's What I Call Music 11, released on November 19th, 2002. It also has the Billboard Hot 100 number 1 hits, what are they? Oh, the Billboard Hot 100 number 1 hit, Hot in Here by Nelly. This is Now That's What I Call Music 12, featuring the Billboard Hot 100 number 1 hit, Bump 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 by, whoever sings it. and was released on March 25th, 2003. And this is now, that's what I call Music 13. And is the first of the only two nows that do not feature any number ones. Here's Now That's What I Call Music 14. Now 13 was released in July 2013. Can't remember what day, but Now That's What I Call Music 14 was released on November 4th, 2003, and it features the number one hit Crazy in Love by Beyonce. This Now 15 was released on, I think it was March 25th, 2004, and features the number one hit Stand Up by Ludacris. This is Now That's What I Call Music 16, that was released on July 27th, 2004, including two Billboard Hot 100 number one hits, which would be Hey Ya by Outkast and Slow Motion by Genville. This is Now That's What I Call Music 17. It has 20 tracks, including the Billboard Hot 100 number one hits, Lean Back by Who, and Goodies by Who, and was released on November 2nd, 2004. This is Now That's What I Call Music 18, that was released on March 15th, 2005, and has the Billboard Hot 100 number one hit Drop It Like It's Hot by Snoop Dogg featuring Pharrell Williams. Next is Now That's What I Call Music 19. Right here we got the Billboard Hot 100 number one hit Holla Back Girl by Gwen Stefani, and was released on July 19th, 2005. Next is Now 20, released on November 1st, 2005, and features the Billboard Hot 100 number one hit. This is the second Now That's What I Call Music album to not feature any Billboard Hot 100 number one hits. And that's the second of the only two, following Now 13 in 2003. This is Now That's What I Call Music 21, featuring three number one hits, which are Don't Forget About Us by Mariah Carey, actually her first Now appearance, and what's the other one? Grills by Nelly, and Run It by Chris Brown. And this next album, I just listened to it today, is Now That's What I Call Music 22. Now 21's from April 4th, 2006, and Now That's What I Call Music 22 was released on July 11th, 2005. And it features 5 songs that reached the Billboard Hot 100 number one hits. SOS by Rihanna, Temperature by Sean Paul, Ridin' by Chamillionaire, Check on It by Beyonce, and Bad Day by Danielle Powder. And at the time of its release, this was the Now That's What I Call Music album with the most number one hits. This would later be surpassed in 2011 by Now 37, which had 7 number one hits, and is now the second most number one hits on one Now That's What I Call Music album. I'm getting close to 15 minutes here, so